On today's episode of What's Going On in Shayna's Comment Section, we are talking about the Arizona abortion ban. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a doozy of one, but this comment was made a while ago. I want to say, around 6 days ago, and I promised that I would. I was like, will do, right here. So let's dive in. So, can you please do a video on the new abortion ban in Arizona? It's absolutely ridiculous at this point. What are we as women going to have to do to control our own bodies? Maybe a sex strike. Laura Nelson follows up with, that sounds bad. Hopefully every woman simply chooses to go meat free without any actual organization happening, simply because of the ban being in place regarding of if they want a kid or not. I think what's happening here, I understand the first one. I think what's happening here, I think there's a couple words missing, more than fine. When it comes to the idea of a sex strike, I think that is great, that it's worked. It's proven to work in other countries. I don't know if it would work in the United States. At the scale that it needs to be done for it to actually take effect, I don't know if it can be done in the United States. Yeah, that's my main thing. But we're going to refocus. We're going to refocus and focus on the Arizona abortion ban for right now. So first of all, for those who are new here, hi, my name is Shayna. I am a journalist. I also talk a lot about decentering men and about child-free living. So this is a pretty immediate intersection, what's been going on legislatively in the United States, right? There's also some more breaking news in today or yesterday. I don't know when this is going to be posted either. That's coming out of Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas. I'll dive into that later on though. So for right now, for those who don't know what's been going on in Arizona, let's dive in. So this article is from AP. This is the first part, so it's kind of like a summary. The Arizona Supreme Court gave a go-ahead Tuesday to prepare to enforce a long dormant law that bans nearly all abortions, drastically altering the legal landscape for terminating pregnancies in a state likely to have a key role in the presidential election. The law, predating Arizona's statehood, proves no exceptions for rape or incest and allows abortions only if the mother's life is in jeopardy. There should be a massive asterisk by that. Not by AP, but just like, we'll dive into that later. Arizona's highest court suggested doctors can be prosecuted under the 1864 law, though the opinion written by the court's majority didn't explicitly say that. The Tuesday decision threw out an earlier lower court decision that precluded doctors couldn't be charged for performing abortions in the 15 weeks of pregnancy. So this on its own is terrifying, right? But when you take it into a larger historical context, it makes it even more concerning that this is the law that they are choosing to uphold. Here's some more historical context about what was going on in history during that time. Slavery was not abolished, the 13th Amendment. So like technically, the slavery still does exist in the United States today because of the prison system. But we're moving that aside for the sake of this particular video. Slavery was abolished the year after. So Black people were not considered people in terms of the law until 1 year later. So there's that. So when they're talking about the abortion law from this age, they're talking specifically about white women because they were the only people that were considered women that were considered people during this time. And even in terms of the law, they were not fully considered people because they were not given the right to vote until almost 100 years later. For even more context, here is just how old this law was. So Abraham Lincoln was president during this time. In God We Trust was just put on money. Fish and chip shops just opened in London this year. The iconic fish and chips of England in general, that year. The first Geneva Convention happened in that year. Now, what are some things that are important to note that in a historical context, just so that way we don't just think of this as some amorphous spot in history. Here are some things that happened later. When I say later, I mean much later in history, right? Because people are dumb. Men tend to be the dumbest of the people, right? And unfortunately, they're making a lot of the laws. Yikes, right? So women's jeans were not invented until much longer. Menstrual pads were not commercial menstrual pads were not invented until much longer. The banning of lead in paint was not banned until like around 1978, and cocaine in Coca-Cola. Now, Coca-Cola did not exist at this point in time, but this is what we evolved into. We evolved from this to hard drugs in beverages. Also just did some light digging. Turns out Coca-Cola was invented in 1886, and then cocaine was banned from being put in Coca-Cola in 1903, which means that the people that upheld this law, while they were not on cocaine when it was founded, they were on cocaine while it was being upheld. As they continued to push forth more legislation like this, they were on cocaine, and we are upholding these laws. Now let's just take a quick moment and talk about that asterisk that I would love to include in this article that talks about, where are you? You're somewhere in here. Oh yes, only if the mother's life is in jeopardy. The amount of women that have died in current history trying to prove that their life is in jeopardy because of their pregnancy, especially Black women, is astounding. It is astounding, it is terrifying, and it is a wonder to me that in the United States there are Black women who want to have children. Because the issue is not just that you need to prove that the mother's life is in jeopardy, but because the doctors who are trained in this, they know that the mother's life is in jeopardy. The person that is experiencing the pregnancy is feeling the life being drained out of them because of the pregnancy. The medical professionals know that her life is in danger. She knows that her life is in danger. That's not what they're talking about. They need to prove to legislators that the mother's life is in danger. People that have no medical background, who are not experiencing the pain and agony that the pregnant person is going through, they are the ones that need to be proven, that the evidence needs to be presented to and spoken in a way that they can understand it. People that do not understand medical jargon, they are the ones that need to say, oh yeah, actually her life is in danger. Now this is okay. And so as the doctors now have to enter the legal field so that way they can try and save patients' lives, women are dying. Pregnant people are dying en masse. And this is not even lightly talking about what happens when gender affirming care is removed, right? So doctors go to jail for how long, you ask? The law carries a sentence of 2 to 5 years in prison upon conviction. Lawyers for Planned Parenthood Arizona say they believe criminal penalties will only apply to doctors, but the penalties can also apply to providing abortion pills, the most common method in the United States. So yes, doctors can be in jail for, prison for up to 5 years, but also providing abortion pills. Now, would that include pharmacists? Would that include a friend? Who would that include? Because that sounds like a much wider variety of people who could be imprisoned for helping somebody to terminate a non-viable pregnancy. Now, I can't remember where I left off in that last clip, but I want to connect this to another video that I made talking about what's going on in Texas. I'm going to try and figure out how to get the link around here. Bing, bang, bop. Because Texas, this is an article from Vox. The Supreme Court effectively abolishes the right to mass protest in 3 U.S. states. It is no longer safe to organize a protest in Louisiana, Mississippi, or Texas. the Supreme Court announced on Monday that it will no longer hear McKesson versus Doe. The decision to not hear McKesson leaves in place a lower court decision that effectively eliminated the right to organize a mass protest in the states of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas. Under that lower court decision, a protest organizer faces potentially ruinous financial consequences if a single attendee at a mass protest commits an illegal, I'm air quoting, illegal act. Because who are the law enforcement agents? In a hyper police state that we live in, what is considered an illegal act? Is it the same thing as back in the day when vagrancy laws were considered illegal acts? When Black people were not allowed in certain towns, were not allowed to forage, and so they were mass incarcerated? Were those illegal acts? Was it an illegal act to drink at the wrong water fountain? Was that an illegal act? Let's continue on. It is possible that this outcome will be temporary. We can't be thinking like that. Not in these times. We can't prepare for this to be temporary. We can't go into this with that kind of mindset. We know better. We know better. Now, in these last few moments, I just want to connect a couple of pieces together because what happens to one of us will eventually happen to all of us, and Black women have been ringing the alarm bell from the moment that we were kidnapped and forced to reproduce in this country. Black people were not considered people, and thus Black women were not considered people. We were considered a mechanism for breeding more agents for the capitalistic machine that was and is slavery. Right? So the idea of rape and incest did not exist within this context. Parents were forced to have intercourse with their children. Siblings were forced to have intercourse with each other. Sons were forced to have intercourse with their parents for the sake of breeding. Rape was rampant during slavery times because we were never considered people. And so if that is the foundation of the United States, and now we're in a global decline of a global birth rate decline, and the machine needs oil. And like women, are they really considered people? Black people, brown people, like we throw around that's the kind of mentality that was always in the undercurrent. And Black women have been saying, guys, we need to do something about this. We need to do something about this. It's going to affects all of us. And a lot of people said, oh, no, it's fine for now. Don't you have your rights? You have your autonomy. You can vote now. Isn't that, look, you're not even in chains anymore. Yay. And now what has always affected us is now affecting the masses. And now what to do? And for the people that say, okay, well, it can't get much worse than this, right? Yeah, it can. There were breeding farms full of Black people in the United States. It's in our history what worse looks like. It can get a lot worse. I'm hoping it doesn't, but it can, and we know what it looks like. Now, why do I think that a sex strike in the United States would not work? Because historically it has been proven time and time again that people who are marginalized outside of the immediately affected don't think that it could ever get as bad as people who are in the demographic of the marginally affected know that it can. A lot of people think, oh, well, that could never happen to me. And until it happens to you. And we, as the people that would be leading the strike, the people with uteruses that would be leading the strike, we would need to be very honest and listen to and let the people who have always been affected by this lead the charge because they historically know what's on the other side, intimately know what is on the other side, which would also mean that we would have to come together and talk about not just who is going to be leading the charge, but how we can support them. We need to create support networks for each other, because it's more than just, oh, we're not going to have sex with men. It's more than that. Because as I talked about in other videos, the home is the most dangerous place for a woman to be. What kind of safety nets are we going to have when domestic violence starts to rise? What kind of, for the women that are like in the position where they're not able to work, whether it's because of domestic violence or financial abuse or whatever, what kind of safety nets will there be for that? We can't go to the police for this. Black women know this intimately. So there would be so much coming together that would have to happen, which would involve a lot of people coming to terms with how they may have perpetuated different kinds of violence against women, which would involve a lot of people saying, hey, I've done wrong and I apologize, and how can I do better so that way I can be a benefit and a support to this movement, to this community. There would be a lot of that would have to happen for this to actually go through. Now, I think it was Denmark that had the most successful sex strike. Legislatively, things changed for the betterment of the women in that country. There's people of color everywhere. The vast majority of people in the Scandinavian country in which this took place are white. They don't have the kind of history that we have here. So it's not as nuanced as it would have to look here. And I just don't know if people are ready for that. I just don't know. At the scale that it would need to be at for it to actually be effective, I don't think that people are ready for that. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I don't know. So I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Please type if you agree, if you disagree. I'd love to have a conversation about this. Type those away in the comment section, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. And I will talk to you guys later. Okay.